I agree that, each entity has their own role that they are to play. I don't agree with giving the superintendent complete control. And I think there needs to be a system of checks and balances there. And you need to know, as a board member, you need to know something about school policies and education yourself in order to be able to say to the superintendent, maybe we need to re-examine that. But you do allow them their role as superintendent to bring forth these policies. But as a board member, I think you need to be able to say, whoa, let's study that some more. Bring me pros and cons about this so that I can look at both sides of this and examine it and see whether or not this is something we need to take our district into. So let them play their role, but then just don't sit back and say, let the chips fall where they may. Because as a board member, you have a primary responsibility to that school district and the communities that you're serving here at CMS, and also making sure that the superintendent understands their role.
But so should the board set the goals, or should the superintendent set the goals?
I think the superintendent should bring forth the goals.
Okay.
And then they, as two groups, sit down and discuss those goals, and then come to a consensus on those goals.
Okay.
And how do you hold the superintendent accountable for his or her actions?
First of all, knowing who's in charge is one of the ways, and you give the superintendent some leeway because they're the one that you have hired to come in and set things straight and come up with a priority for the district. But yet and still, you don't just back off whenever there's a disagreement. You've got to come to some kind of consensus there, and it should be shared accountability. Not just accountability on one entity, but shared accountability amongst the two parties.
Sure. If you were a new board member, you'd be doing a superintendent search. If you could have anybody in the country, who or what kind of person would you want to hire as superintendent?
Okay. I would want a person who has an extensive education background. I would want a person that has this background serving a large urban, suburban district. It's very difficult for a person coming from a rural setting to understand or be able to deal with the differences that occurs in an urban, suburban versus a rural setting. It needs to be someone who has worked with diverse groups and has some success with working with diverse groups of people, and should be a good listener, first of all, and willing to accept accolades and criticisms because they go hand in hand, and should be able, when the criticisms come, be able to work with the groups that is doing the criticizing. If you're adamant about your stance, then break it down so that those that are criticizing you can understand where you're coming from. But you also give them the opportunity to explain where they are coming from so that there's shared agreement on whatever item is being criticized. I'd like a person who places value in the employees that they have in their district, and is not ashamed to say that they value their employees and lets their employees know that they are valued, and that they're there to do what's best for children and expect them to do what's best for all children there. So, and last of all, well, very importantly, because this district has such a huge budget, that person needs to have some business acumen about them. I look at one superintendent that has been on the news talking about he has his doctorate in education administration, but also has an MBA, and that has served him well when it comes to doing the business about the district. So it needs to be someone that has that business sense and just doesn't turn it over to someone else, but also has a hand in it themselves.
So, I mean, I'm listening to your list, and there aren't many people in the country who have successfully led an urban suburban district that's diverse, that is large, that
And apparently there's something like 16 large school systems.
I know,
Looking right
I
now.
know.
How do
And
we
that's
get some-
why I feel like as a board, we have to look at what's there and be willing to help shape what we want. Not just turn it all over, but be willing to help shape. I think the superintendent I was talking about, even though he leads a rural, he's the kind of person that today's superintendents are. They are not coming from this manufactured list of superintendents that we're seeing right now, you know, where they're going through one kind of training, and that's the only kind of training that you're looking at. We got to look for someone who is open-minded and not going to just follow the beaten path, but willing to strike out on their own. Even though they may have gone through that line of training, but they get in here and see what it is that this district has to offer, and they're willing to roll up their sleeves and do something other than what the manual says that they're supposed to do.